morning, the factory remains cordoned off, UV. Outside the factory where the plane crashed into. As far as we understand, the incident took place at around 4 p.m. yesterday afternoon. The plane crashed into a factory, as I've mentioned, injuring one employee from the factory who lost their limb. Emergency services saying that this is one of the worst incidents that has happened around this area. We know that they stayed 30 minutes after making sure that the rescue operation is completed, that all the patients that are inside that plane were taken to hospital. We know that their injuries range from minor to critical. Patients that were critical were taken to the neighbor hospital via a helicopter, others transported using the ambulance facility. What we know so far is that we are not allowed to actually get any further than where we are standing. Security personnel telling us here this morning that the investigation as to what caused the incident are still underway. What we've seen happening this morning is that we've seen vehicles from the aviation authority entering the gate behind me. The security personnel that are here are from the airport security, saying that they've been here overnight securing this area.
Zikhona, just for clarity, you say that there was one person from the factory was injured, so then the rest of them who were injured and the one person who was killed, they were all passengers in this plane, or they were on board this plane?
Certainly 18 of those passengers that were injured were inside the plane. One from the factory lost their limb, and the one that is deceased was also a passenger of the plane. We actually don't have much clarity as to what caused the incident. What we know is that emergency services saying yesterday that it seemed that the plane experienced technical problems prior to taking off, because that the accident actually happened two kilometers away from where the plane was taking off. So certainly we're waiting for more clarity as to what actually caused the accident. We're hoping to get more details around that later on this morning. What I do know, though, as I've mentioned, is that investigations have been going on throughout the night. Security personnel outside here are saying that we can't go much further than here because of the fact that the investigation continues.
Zikhona, do we have any details as to what this flight was meant for? I mean, where were they going? Who were the people who were on board? Just looking at some stories this morning also, I've read that this was a vintage plane, that it was built in the 1950s. So do we know what the purpose of this flight actually was?
A lot of the details surrounding where this plane was headed to or what it was doing here is still very sketchy. What we know is that it was headed for Europe. It was expected to arrive in Amsterdam, I think, on the 28th of July, according to reports in the newspapers as well as the internet. But we're still waiting for more details. As I've mentioned, this incident took place quite late yesterday afternoon. Security personnel rushing to the scene, and the priority at the time was to make sure that everyone that was inside the plane was rescued from the plane and taken to nearest hospital facilities. What we know is that 4 patients or 4 of those passengers actually gave a lot of trouble in terms of getting out of the plane. The emergency services saying yesterday that they were struggling to get 4 of those passengers out of that plane. So certainly it was a very big incident that happened here. The Tshwane emergency services saying one of the biggest they've seen in this area since one of the emergency services since they've been working in this area. This is one of the biggest accidents that they've seen taking place here. So we're waiting for more details, and I presume that as this day progresses, we'll get more details about the plane itself, about the passengers. We know that majority of them, if not all of them, were actually foreign nationals from Russia, what I've read, as well as Australia. So certainly we're waiting for more details surrounding the passengers themselves, as well as details surrounding the plane, where it was headed to, what it was doing in South Africa, and hopefully as the day progresses we'll get more of those details.
And Zikhona, I'm not sure if you'll have this information this early, but do we know if this has affected operations at Wonderboom Airport at all this morning?
Well, what we know so far is that the crash itself took place 2 kilometers away from the actual airport. We understand that the plane experienced technical problems during the takeoff, and it plunged into a nearby factory. We don't know yet as to whether operations at the actual airport have been affected. What I do know is that the security personnel that have been guarding the factory area, which is where the plane crashed, are actually from the airport security. So we're still waiting for more detail as to how that has actually impacted on the operations at the airport itself. What's happening around me, it seems as though the traffic is flowing normally. People are using the road in front of me. It's just that the area behind me has been cordoned off. We'll still wait and see as to whether the staff that work at the factory will be able to report for duty this morning. What I was reading was that what they saw they weren't actually understanding what was happening, what was crashing before their eyes. But I see a lot of them have come out saying that what they saw was beyond their belief. So we're still waiting for more details from the factory itself as to whether the staff who work here will be able to report for duty as usual this morning.
All right, we'll wait and see, and hopefully some more details a little later on. We will catch up with you a little later on, and hopefully there will be some kind of briefing or some kind of some more info that will come out about this crash. Zikhona Tshona near Wonderboom Airport for us this morning.